all of their boats. They have some missiles, but not very many. I think we're in very good shape.
This is a war imposed on us. Transportation of oil has been slowed down because of the attacks and aggression made by Israelis and Americans against us.
As the war in West Asia intensifies even further, US President Trump has declared victory already, saying Tehran is on the brink of defeat, but warning that it doesn't mean US is going to end the war immediately. Trump said this, that the United States will remain engaged in the Iran conflict to finish the job, citing major military gains, including the destruction of dozens of Iranian naval vessels. However, this comes hours after Trump suggested that the war could soon be over because Washington had run out of targets. Speaking to reporters in Washington, Trump warned that it will be almost impossible to rebuild Iran should US choose to escalate these strikes and hit sections of Tehran.
Dramatic.
We don't want to leave early, do we? We got to finish the job, right? Over the past 11 days, our military has virtually destroyed Iran. Tough country. Their air force is gone, totally gone. That took the better part of about 3 hours.
Further, the US president said that the US is going to look very strongly at the straits. Earlier in the week, Trump had hinted at the possibility of taking over the strategic Strait of Hormuz, a key global oil choke point carrying a fifth of the world's oil.
Well, we're going to be in very good shape. You see what's happening. They are pretty much at the end of the line. Doesn't mean we're going to end it immediately, but they've got no Navy, they've got no Air Force, they've got no anti-air traffic, anything. They have no systems of control. We're just riding free range over that country. And now we're going to look very strongly at the straits. The straits are in great shape.
Meanwhile, as oil prices are continuously disrupted, the United States Department of Energy said that it will release 172 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve of the US, the SPR. That's going to happen beginning next week. The release would take approximately 120 days to deliver based on planned discharge rates. The agency also accused Iran of manipulating and threatening the energy security of America and its allies. Iran, too, on its part, issued a series of warnings by threatening to wage a prolonged war with the US and Israel that would destroy the world economy. The statement comes as fighting near the Strait of Hormuz rattles energy markets and prompts emergency reserve releases. Oil prices have surged since the 28th of February, the day this war started, which was started by the US, when US and Israel launched airstrikes on Iran, killing its supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and plunging the West Asia region into conflict. All right, now joining me live on the broadcast is Yusuf Jalali, the journalist from Tehran. Mr. Jalali, thank you so much for making time for us. It's always good to hear from you to get an understanding of ground realities in Tehran. There's a lot of bravado coming in from the US, a lot of statements. They've even declared victory. I want to understand first from you, what's the ground situation? What's a regular day in Tehran looking like right now?
Of course, the frequency of the strikes in the capital, Tehran, have reduced significantly, and they are focused now on targeting Iran's nuclear-related facilities. Earlier in the conflict, we heard multiple strikes every day. The frequency was higher compared to now, but now we see that the strikes no longer target military infrastructure, but they are now focusing on nuclear buildings and nuclear facilities. And now we heard that Taliban Tehran complex was also targeted by the Israelis. Of course, Iran is yet to comment on that, but Tehran is very much significant. It is located inside a sprawling military complex called Parchin in southeast Tehran. And since day one of the strikes, Parchin was under heavy airstrikes by the Israelis. And of course, Parchin is a military complex which hosts much of Iran's ballistic missile storage facilities. But of course, the Israelis and the IAEA have long been blaming Iran for hosting some of its nuclear-related activities in Tehran inside this Parchin complex. Iran has denied those allegations, but of course, the Israelis and the IAEA, the UN nuclear watchdog, have accused Iran of developing explosive testing devices related to nuclear warheads inside that Parchin facility, inside a specific part of Parchin facility called Tehran. But Iran has denied those allegations and have even provided access to the IAEA inspectors back in 2015 when Iran and the world powers, of course, signed the nuclear deal. Back then, Iran allowed partial access by the IAEA inspectors to provide them with proof that they're not after any nuclear warhead development or any explosive devices being produced there. But of course, these are the allegations that have been persisting for years. Iran has not commented on that, but the retaliatory strikes have increased in the intensity. Iran has been retaliating by launching ballistic missiles towards the Israeli territories and, of course, towards U.S. bases in the region. And now we see that Iran seems to be very much confident to be able to continue to fight back. Iran has now a warning of targeting banks across the region. Why? Because Sepah Bank, a building, of course, linked to Sepah Bank in Tehran, was targeted in an airstrike with one casualty confirmed. Of course, Iran now has, the Iranian armed forces have now, of course, warned the Israelis and the Americans that they're going to target their banks linked to the Israelis and the Americans inside the GCC region. So Iran seems to be very much focused on now on retaliating each and every single strike it receives from Israel and the United States.
Understood. I'll go back to what I was trying to understand from you, Mr. Jalali, before we go a little further into the things that you spelled out for us in your response. Are you able to step out during the day? What's the regular cities looking like? Is it in a permanent state of shutdown? Are schools functioning? Is regular public transport on the move? Or perhaps if you can show us around anything, I'd just like to toss to you and understand from you what Tehran is like right now.
Well, of course, the government has advised people to stay indoors. It has advised its supporters to stay on the streets. There's very much nuance in why the government is advising its supporters to stay on the streets, because the government believes that the streets are a new front with people, the supporters and the followers of the Islamic Republic, being on the streets every day and even night to express their support for the government at this very much critical time, because Iran now believes that it wants to avoid internal and external pressures. Now it is under heavy external pressure, the military pressure that's coming from the U.S. and Israel, and internal and potential internal unrest seems to be on the horizon if the Israelis just pushed for that, try to destabilize the internal, of course, the internal climate, so to speak. So now Iran has been asking its citizens, supporters, to stay on the streets, to stage rallies, hold some commemoration ceremonies for the lives lost during the conflict. And this is a powerful message for the world that Iran still enjoys immense popularity. And this is, of course, given legitimacy for the Islamic establishment. But whether or not it is safe to go out on the streets, it's not safe for now, because the bombardment continues. The frequency has been reduced, but of course, the bombardment, the airstrikes continue to target some places. We're not sure which part is going to be a target. So stepping outside of houses and just walking on the streets or even driving in the streets is still not safe, because some civilian facilities may be a target or a collateral damage in any airstrike.
Understood. Let me come to the next point, Mr. Jalali. When will the world get a first glimpse of Iran's new supreme leader? Till when will the world be seeing a cardboard cutout of him?
Well, everybody has been waiting for the third supreme leader to appear and show up in public, maybe, or even on state television or even provide release some written statement. Nothing yet. Of course, there are reports of him being wounded on the first day of the strikes. Some reports suggest that he has been wounded, and of course his eye, there's been bruising around his left eye, his left leg has been fractured, and of course there have been some injuries in his abdomen or stomach. We're not sure because Iran has not given much details about his health condition. They're saying that he's safe and sound, but he has sustained some injuries on the first day of the strikes. And of course, Iran says that due to the threats coming from the Israelis and the Americans, potential targeting or assassination attempt may be pursued by the Israelis and the Americans. It is very much significant for the Islamic Republic to protect him and not to bring him into danger. So yes, but everyone, especially the followers, the supporters of the Islamic Republic, have been calling on the government to try to show him, because they pledged allegiance with him. We see different people from all walks of life staging those rallies that I described earlier, day and night. And they're just calling on the government to try to see their third supreme leader.
Mr. Jalali, the Iranian president, he laid out terms for ending the war. And this was the first stance coming in from Iran, that perhaps these are the conditions and we will let go of the counterattacks that we're carrying out, or the attacks the way one would like to see it. Pezeshkian mentioned 3 conditions: recognize Iran's legitimate rights, compensate for the damages, and international guarantees against further such attacks. I wanted to understand from you, how strong is Iran's position to dictate any terms at this point? I understand Iran is not capitulated, but what is the stance at this point to dictate terms?
Well, this is by far the first sign of, we can call it openness or overture to diplomacy on the part of the Islamic Republic. Of course, we sometimes, when Pezeshkian is speaking, we have to just look at what he says with a grain of salt, so to speak, because he makes so many comments that then would be rejected or even rebuked by other branches of the government and other senior Iranian officials. So he said he laid out 3 conditions. First and foremost is the recognition of Iran's rights. So by this, he means that the United States should recognize Iran's right to nuclear enrichment and, of course, ballistic missile production, and not to mention Iran's regional influence. This is one of the conditions. And then he said that a payment for reparations. During the war, many civilian facilities, government-related facilities have been targeted. He seeks reparations for that. And third, international guarantees against future aggression. Iran does not want to repeat the mistake it did back in June last year. Back in June last year, Iran gave in to a ceasefire. Nothing was signed between the 2 sides. No deal was achieved between the 2 sides. Iran just simply agreed to a ceasefire. But now we see that after 8 months, it is again being attacked by the U.S. and Israel. Iran does not want that mistake to be repeated. So Iran wants a permanent ceasefire, end of hostilities between Washington and Tehran to be signed somehow with mediation by other parties like Oman, maybe, Russia, Turkey, Qatar. These are the countries that usually try to mediate and broker any agreement between the 2 sides.
Mr. Jalali, allow me to come in there. As you mentioned, that whatever Pezeshkian is saying, the Iranian president, it's looked at with a grain of salt within Iran. So it's very clear that if within Iran that's the way it is accepted or seen, there isn't a dime which is coming out from the US or Israel regarding these demands or these statements that have come out very recently. From there, I just want to come to my question. At this point, Iran is functioning without a supreme leader really calling the shots, who is currently injured, is what reports are suggesting. Pezeshkian, what he's saying, that's the Iranian president, it's looked at with a grain of salt. Who is really calling the shots at this point in Iran?
Of course, the way Iran leads is the supreme leader is the commander-in-chief. So Iran cannot go ahead without a supreme leader. We're not sure about whether or not he is calling the shots. We're talking about the third supreme leader, Ayatollah Mujtaba Khamenei. We're not sure whether or not he is now just issuing orders or commands or leading the operations. Nothing has emerged, so we're not going to say for sure that it is Mujtaba who is now leading all of this. But of course, the Constitutional Council, based on Iran's constitution, there's an interim constitutional leadership council that bridges or transitions Iran from the former or the previous supreme leader to the next supreme leader. This Constitutional Council is still functioning. And it is now the entity that is calling the shots. But from the way Iran is responding to the attacks, the way Iran is retaliating to the incoming attacks, we can see that on the battleground, on the battlefield, Iran's behavior has really changed, because we've heard that a more confrontational path is going to be pursued under Mujtaba, and Iran seems to be reflecting this behavior on the battlefield, because Iran has intensified its retaliatory strikes against Israel and the U.S. bases in the region.
Mr. Jalali, thank you so much for giving us your time. And I understand the situation in Tehran, but for you to always join us on the broadcast and give us an insight into what really life is looking like inside Tehran, inside Iran. We're always looking forward to having such interactions with you. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast.
Anytime.